I grew up the periphery that Pew talks about. I grew up completely unaffiliated. I knew nothing about Judaism, but I grew up in the 5 towns of Long Island, so Shabbat passed by our door every Friday night waiting for me to join her. When I was 12 years old, I read The Chosen and I wept, and I remember thinking, how can I ever know what Danny and Reuben know? But I lived a closet Jew until I was 22 and started a journey around the world, and in a pre-birthright generation ended up on a boat that led to Haifa, and I was kind of led to Sfat and spent the better part of 3 years living in a midrasha and learning a shin from a hay and having experiences that I can't explain. 3 rabbinical school later, I come to you as a part of this experiment that is Open Temple, and we really seek to create an open door through which everyone can go on their Jewish soul journey. A part of what I'd like to discuss with you today is this concept of disruptive ritual, which is a term that I've coined to talk about what we're doing at Open Temple. We literally create that liminal space that ritual dwells in. Peter Brook, the theatrical director, talks about an empty space. Our services take place in the Black Box Theater. My husband calls me a performance art rabbi. Some people would agree. The concept is that we have to convert what are ritual experiences into a contemporary relevance. And Open Temple does it by tweaking and twerking and inviting everyone to get playful with the ritual space. So I'm going to give some rituals, some imagery right now, if you can just go forward. So what do we have before us here? What are we looking at? Be bold, just say it. Someone said Azazel, exactly. So last year at Open Temple, we began Yom Kippur with the Rolling Stones' Sympathy of the Devil as people were walking in. And people asked, why did you start with that? And my response was, every year we give expiation to the devil, and yet why does no one talk about it? What in our human capacity would require us to bring an offering to the devil? And at the moment that I said that, we had been reading the Torah portion, and I think I turned it off or paused it. Okay, we're back. No, here, let me figure it out. In the moment that I said that, we were in the middle of our Torah portion when I asked what about human capacity would require us to give expiation to the devil. And in that moment on our screen, because all of our prayers are projected, the images from Charlottesville appeared with men in torches screaming, "Jews won't replace us." And at that moment, a man rose from our congregation and says, "That was me. That was me. I was one of them." And I said, "Will you please come down and explain yourself?" His name is Logan, and I planted him there. He was from an organization called Life After Hate. And Logan shared his story of 20 years in and out of state penitentiary and how he grew up a neo-Nazi, and he had come to us last year on Yom Kippur to ask for forgiveness. And the entire congregation descended around him, and we gave him a Misha Berach. And people felt a palpable sense of the human capacity to forgive. We take these images at Open Temple and we bring them to life. This year, I'm really struggling with the one on the bottom right, the concept of the king in the field. Because it's incontrovertible, no matter how we want to play with concepts of God, that we have received an anthropomorphic God on Yomim Noraim. We're told to chant Hamelech irrefutably and soulfully, Avinu Malkeinu. We can't finesse that out. So this year, just as a sneak preview, we're going to be wrestling with this anthropomorphized God that we famously say was captured in the book of Daniel, but we don't want to kind of talk about that. So we're going to, without apology, talk about those concepts. We have Yizkor that we bring relevance to. We have the banishment of the Ger, where one year we had, in the middle of the Torah service, as we read about the banishment of Hagar, we heard Muslim prayers being sung, and 4 women came out and did a prostration prayer. And as they were prostrating, 4 LAPD officers came and stood between them. And that year in Venice, 2 homeless had been killed by police officers. So then a homeless advocate walked in, and they became the bibliodrama of Hagar and Ishmael. we're asking what it feels like to be a cop in this day, and we allow the officer to tell his story, which was a post 9/11 story, of how he discovered he wanted to be a cop after his friend died, and he came to LA from New York to help resolve the homeless problem. This year we'll be going in a little different direction with it all, but I just share it's ripe every year to kind of crack things open and bring it to life. We're going to go to what's next. So if we have these images, the question I ask, Melissa, is why do we only do this? This is a beautiful way to read Torah. It's a beautiful way, but we as progressive Jews have so much opportunity to yes and this. And many of our congregations forget the and part. We say yes to this, and Torah is exquisite. We have Torah reading. We have our B'nai Mitzvah, post-B'nai Mitzvah class doing the Torah readings. We have lay leaders doing the Torah readings. We also disrupt the Torah to make it relevant to today. So we do this, and then the next question I have, next Melissa, is we meet here. This is so beautiful, right? It's so expensive. It creates a burden to rabbis to sustain this. There's that old rabbi, I forget her name, but she did this beautiful, beautiful modeling of the building. Did you see this YouTube? It's brilliant. What's her name? Does anyone know it?
Miriam Turtle-Champ.
Is that, say it again?
Miriam Turtle-Champ.
Okay, so her, Miriam, did this beautiful YouTube video about the building, and she talked, the toilet was talking to her because it needed plumbing, and no one's available to do it, and there's no budget, so she's fixing the toilet. How many people are familiar with this, right? And in the end, she convinced her board to sell the building. And the congregation is thriving and their membership is up. And so there's something that we have edifice complex. And we need to allow ourselves to think outside of that synagogue box, not just for ritual space and ritual moments, but what is it doing to our ability to take risks? And I'm not saying everyone should get rid of a beautiful building, but I am saying to think laterally and to think differently can go as broad or as small as we want. So I invite us to be dreamers this year. So we have this, and yet I'm going to show you what open temple models. Next, Melissa. So we do this. And the idea is celebration. The idea is that people come in and say, yes, my body feels alive here. I would never go to synagogue until now, or, oh, I've gone to everywhere and finally found here. And I'm not trying to say this is, like, what we're doing is right and what others are doing wrong. I'm saying we finally have a place for where none of the above match people, and they can come to a place where they can feel like this. So next are some images that I want to leave us with. On the top left, we 1 year, and this I give this to you because the question is, how can we do this in a more traditional environment? How can we bring disruptive ritual in a place where my board would throw me out if if I brought in I guess, a neo-Nazi asking for forgiveness. So on the top left, the 1 year underneath everyone's seat, I had taped baggage tags. And I asked everyone to go underneath, and they had to, because we write in our community, write their baggage on the tag. And then we passed a red thread to the entire congregation. It was a singular thread, and everyone got a piece, and they got to tie their baggage on it. And then 2 goats came in. And we tied this thread. First we acknowledged it, and we all spoke out loud what we had written in a group Vidui. And we tied it onto one of the sweet goats, and we sent it to Azazel. And the other one we gave to God, and it was an amazing barbecue after. Just kidding. Although you could do that at Gabe's synagogue, right? Gabriel, just an idea for breakfast, 5780, wherever you are. So we have a lot going on. We take spirituality to the LA River. We take spirituality on bicycles. We did Open Temple Bike Shabbat. I think we're in our 3rd year doing that. It was beautiful. We do a dance walk down Abbot Kinney Boulevard with the Torah. We're really celebrating things radically differently. We have a Hebrew School of the Arts that you're not going to Hebrew school, you're going to art school. And I invite all of us. I say LA is really a hotbed of a Jewish Renaissance. Everyone here is doing amazing work. And what I think that we represent so much is what California represents through this incredible geography. It informs us to be expansive, it informs us to be inspired, it informs us to look at the beauty of nature and allow it to go through us. And so my blessing is that we all remember that creative space this high holidays, and that we all dwell in a place of mystery together, and remember that inclusivity goes so, so beyond our personal limitations, and that casting the wide tent is really saying yes and to all of us. So thank you for letting me share.
It's a wonderful segue. Hi, I'm Rabbi Cantor Judy Greenfeld, and I'm so excited to be here to share with you a continuation of creativity and what it means to think outside the box and to break some of the barriers. I have been leading and building a synagogue called the Not-Show Minyan Synagogue for the last 13 years, one minyan at a time. Because there is something quite special about 10 at a time. Something I found when I started is that when you have 10, just like in a minyan, God shows up. And I remember every year that I would, say, am I going to do this again? I said, as long as 10 show up, I'll be there. And miraculously 10 have just kept coming, and more. And so 13 years later, what I would like to do today is introduce some of you. You've probably heard a little bit about it. What's beautiful is you're going to hear from a couple of different rabbis who had the chance to think outside the box. I want to say yay for AJR for encouraging us to think outside the box and create a new dimension that is desperately needed. Just where that little box is that says other, because Judaism is continuing to grow. That's why we wear our fringes, because we're not finished. We have to keep going and reaching. And those little tendrils that are coming off of our talit are saying, get the antenna out. And so I'm excited that we were asked, and I want to thank Alana because she comes. It's very rare, and I invite any of you. I love when I see my colleagues and have an opportunity to share with them discoveries. Because I think this really, Judaism today, and the exciting thing about our field is that we're discovering. And I know that the Not-Show Minyan's message and our mission is to allow each individual the dignity to discover where they fit on that Jewish tapestry. I think we all are trying to do that, and I'm just excited to be a part of that. So what I wanted to show you today is, and what Alana had asked me is, I'm passing out to all of you just something really simple, something that smells wonderful and fresh. And I want to just demonstrate for you the power of smell. And to think about the smells and how powerful they are in our life and according to Judaism. Because if I was able to pump in chicken soup into this room right now, it would take us to a place, I'd be right in my grandmother's kitchen. And I think that it's one of the senses that is underestimated. So when we're sitting in synagogue, maybe I remember juicy fruit or some gum that was tucked into one of the talit bags. But I'm providing you at this time of day, because first of all, I want to congratulate those of you who stayed this long. And we're feeling, and we're just eating. And so that smell of peppermint, as you know, there's a whole series of Jewish beautiful teachings about essential oils and scent, being the closest to our prophetic or spiritual selves. It's a doorway in. And I just want to remind you of that ability, because who thinks about that? Not many of us. And so I first want to take a moment to let us just sit for a moment, and you're smelling an essential oil. And I just want to see how you feel about it, and give you an opportunity to feel what your congregants might be feeling. So I just want to stop for a moment. We've received so much from our heads, which we love, but I want to sink into our bodies just for the next few moments. So if you'll just put your feet on the floor, take a few deep breaths, and just allow, what is that scent? You may like it, you may not like it, whatever, but what's going on inside of you that isn't so intellectual right now? Can you drop into your body? You see, I noticed that that our sense of sight is the most powerful. especially last year, I decided that I wanted to take a moment from all the reading that I was doing to focus on what we don't see. And so I want to just give you a sense of what would happen if you joined the Nacho Minion. We take at the Calabasas, and we're in a big theater. And we don't have the ability to be in a synagogue, so I have to create that sacred space. And when we do this, we have behind us, and not everybody can do this, but we can be creative in many different ways, and we have a backdrop. And all it is moments in nature. It's a very slow drive. Because what are we doing? We're creating and celebrating the birth of the world. This idea of the moon is also who we are. We are people of the moon. Our calendar is governed by the moon and the phases of the moon. So this slow feed, you're seeing Kol Nidre, I wanted to create an awareness of how important it is for us to look around, look past the busyness in a more cosmic way. I always feel an incredible cosmic dimension at this time of year because there's something that draws us, almost like gravity, to the high holy days that we're not even aware of. Even if it's aggravation, there's something that's pulling at us. And I wanted to acknowledge the pull just as powerfully as I wanted to acknowledge gravity. It's inside of us. So I'm going to let you watch, but I want you to look for some of the little things that have been added, whether it's, like if you just notice how we've used the background, not too many pictures, just enough, hopefully, just a sip, how we've used words to just enhance what we're doing, this moment. I focused on the eclipse last year, and I'll tell you why in just a moment, but take a look. Also connecting to today, how the words of this music talk about Teshuvah, coming home. And I read something that struck me, which was the author of this article was saying that the eclipse brought, like last year was kind of an amazing thing. People were driving from all over the world, spiritual people that I know, this was a big moment. And she said, I'm not religious, but to me it felt like what happens at high holidays, which was such a bizarre thing. Because even if she's not religious, something touched her. And when you use the senses, we get a window this big. If we don't imprint and feel something and have an experience, it's just another high holidays. This is how I approach it. And my goal is to thread something in that moment, and I try many, many different things. What's going to imprint? And when we bring in our sense of sight, and we know how fast people look at things, they see sight. I'm not sure all of what you got there, but this was my way of giving you a vision that I share with you. So you know what I'm talking about, the common ground. That sense of smell, which has hopefully brought you to just slow down, have a little feeling of everything's fine, just a little more time, and we're learning, and it slows you down a little bit, and brings a freshness to this moment. And I could go on about the power of that. Our ears, what are we hearing? Well, obviously beautiful music, but what also are we hearing in our heart? How can we bring it down into our heart? What is vibrating through us when we hear the shofar sounding? Oh, that's important. I was distracted by the sound of the music, how important that sound is, if it's going to reach you or not. As a cantor, how's the sound? Right? Oh, I think you need your batteries. This could be a battery thing. So see how technology, all these things are no technology, how it gets in the way of what people see and experience. And touch, the sense of touch. We're sitting frontal, we experience it from a frontal position. But what this woman said in the article was the most beautiful part of the eclipse wasn't the eclipse itself, but when she turned around, how she looked and she saw all the masses of people. She wasn't looking at backs of heads anymore, but she was seeing the effect that it had. And she said it was like her gazing at the stars. We're told to turn. And in that turning, we see different things every place that we turn. And so that little moment, that little movement creates a ripple effect. Just turning, I've noticed it. And many of you may know that I come from a dance background. I'm a mover. And so that sense of what's enough movement that doesn't scare people, that can invite them. I encourage when we get to certain places that sense of touch, because there is this worry of being too touchy-feely. You have to, in some ways, be very gentle about that sense of touch. People come to the high holidays to connect. There is this sense of being on a pilgrimage. There's a sense of just getting there. There's a lot we can do on their journey there. They may not pick up, look on your website, they may not pick up the messages, but for example, one year we were at the top of the Sheraton. That was the only room that we could get. And all this complaining about the elevator, going to the top floor. So I created a meditation for them, something that they could smell along the way, and understand that they were being elevated. It set a tone. And this is what I mean by what happens in the parking lot, what happens in the arguments along the way, the how of our approach. My goal is to check them in, not let them check out. And if it's just the mind, they'll go on their cell phone. But there's something that happens, and I want to encourage you all to explore. What happens when they smell something different? What happens when they turn in a different direction? What happens, this wonderful woman made me realize that she said, I used to look at the back of the head of somebody in synagogue for years. They never saw me, but I saw them. And when it was my child's 13th birthday, when he became bar mitzvah, I happened to have seen them at a restaurant. And I went up to them and said, "You don't know me, but I know the back of your head. For the last 5 years, I've watched your family grow up." Wow! Think about it. I remember the backs of people's heads. The sense of touch. One year, everybody got tzitzit. Because I tell you, I remember braiding my father's tzitzit. There's things that we do, and we kind of mindlessly, we don't even know, but that's where the treasures are. Now, I think my time is up. Or how am I doing? I just want to be really mindful of time. Is anybody timing me? 5-minute mark? We're done, conclude. Okay, because I want to leave time for Anne. With our senses, the last thing I want to say is there's treasures in what we don't see. I was reading Alan Lew's book about how Buckminster Fuller said the greatest contributors to the world had been Sigmund Freud and Albert Einstein. I thought that was so interesting. And from that sprang this whole eclipse experience for me. What he meant by, he said, you see, Freud and Einstein showed us what wasn't there, what we couldn't see with our regular eyes. I think that we've gotten into a habit of seeing certain things at the holidays, expecting. And so I want you to look, and so what I used also was a story about how a school teacher asked all the students to put a black dot on their page after they finished their writing assignment. And this is the only thing he was going to grade was what they did with the black dot. And he said, I want you to write what you see. He said 80% of them wrote, I see a black dot, kind of a Rorschach thing happening. He said, maybe a small percentage said, I see the white space. I see the white space. That was what I ended with last year. And I want you to look at this eclipse. We usually look at the lining up and the blacking out of like a big opportunity, the darkness being potential. But look at all the white space and all the light that comes from that bit of darkness. And I ask you this year, let's look for the things that we're not looking at to enhance and to create another level of awareness in this beautiful experience and journey that we call Judaism. Thank you, guys.
Hi, I can tell you that I'm very honored to be in such a lineup with such creative people. Judy, I want you to know that this is something that you should definitely give to your people, but keep it from falling asleep. You know, I took a deep breath. I was about to fall asleep. I was really tired, and all of a sudden I felt like Mechaye HaMeitim. So this is really great. You know, the blessing for mourners blesses the remnants, Sha'ar Avalei Zion v'Yerushalayim, the remnants of Zion and Jerusalem. I want to bless the remnants of the high holidays seminar and give you some very practical tools that I can't believe nobody figured this out before me. Everybody dies in the middle of a conversation. And to heal, we have to find out where we were in that conversation and begin to find a way to have it as part of a spiritual connection instead of the physical connection. It's probably the most excruciating transformation that human beings have to do, turning a physical relationship into a spiritual relationship and making peace with that. Judaism gives us so many wonderful tools for mourning, but I have to say that I think the most brilliant is the tool of Yizkor. Because with Yizkor, we acknowledge that the conversation goes on, and we make a makom, and remember, makom is the name that we use in the blessing for mourners. We create a makom for that conversation to continue. And lo and behold, the 4 days on which we say the Yizkor blessing, if you look at the themes of those days, they line up with many of the themes of mourning, many of the tasks of mourning, the 4 tasks of mourning, really. So I'll go over them quickly. You have a handout on your table which will tell you more, and if you want more, there's a lot more in Mourning and Mitzvah, and there's even more in the latest edition which just came out, which expanded the section on Yizkor. And so the first day on which we say yes, Yizkor during the year is Yom Kippur. So what do on Yom Kippur? What is one of the things that we do? I go around and I say to Janet, if I've hurt you in any way, please, let's get it right. And so that's what mourners have to do. They have to evaluate their relationships and find where they were in the conversation, what was the unfinished business, what needs to be cleaned up. As you know, it's not just Yom Kippur, it's Yom HaKippurim, which tells us that not only are we doing kaparot for our own souls, but we're also doing it for the souls of those who are deceased. So Yom Kippur is an opportunity to really look at the unfinished business in a relationship and see what needs to be followed up on. I just realized I did not set my time. So I'll go now. Just got this wonderful watch. Okay, sorry. So that's, I'm going to go through them quickly, and then I'll go back and spend a little bit more time with each one. So what's the next day that we say Yizkor? It's your congregant's favorite holiday. Shemini Atzeret. So there's a legend that says that at the end of Sukkot, which is the day before Shemini Atzeret technically, people would leave the temple. Now, as you know, it was a house of prayer for all peoples, and it wasn't just the people of Judea who came. But at the end of Sukkot, which was supposed to be so fabulous in the time of the temple, people would go home that were not part of the family. And God would say to the family, don't go, please stay. And of course, that sentiment is such a big part of grief. And what is the most significant liturgical thing that takes place on Shemini Atzeret? Geshem, right. So of course, what is Geshem in terms of mourning? Yes, we have to feel those tears. We have to acknowledge the yearning and the need for people to just acknowledge how much we don't want them to go. So that's Shemini Atzeret. Then we move to Pesach, because without the tears of Shemini Atzeret, without the tears of mourning, the stones in the heart don't dissolve. Without the rains, the seeds don't germinate. So as we move from Shemini Atzeret into the spring, we begin to look at Pesach. And the question is, what is it? Wait, that light is right in my eyes. What is it that, how am I still living in someone else's house? How am I still in bondage, either to the relationship or to the person who's died? And so then, the Yizkor of Pesach enables us to look at that question. And then finally, the fourth day of Yizkor, Shavuot, we get to look at what was the Torah of the relationship, what was the gift? What have I learned from this person that I treasure? What have I learned from mourning this person that I treasure? Now, the cycle goes round and round and round, and so each year you step back in and you have the opportunity to explore it a little bit more, from a little bit deeper perspective. Some people at the beginning can only do the unfinished business, the wrestling with the person who's died, whereas other people can only say good things about the person who died. And without being able to do this nuanced dance through all of the seasons, we don't get the full healing that we need, because people can become stuck in, oh, what a wonderful person they were, or what a disgusting person they were. And they stay there, and they get frozen, and they don't really grieve, and they don't really have the opportunity to elevate the relationship to a place where they can really heal and elevate the conversation. You know, there's a story in the Zohar that says that after a soul leaves the body, it's taken in spoons and thrown from one edge of the universe to the other until all the dust falls off. So if the dust falls off from a difficult soul, it means that all of the slings and arrows that contorted that soul and made it so difficult for them to look and just see panim al panim, soul to soul, face to face. Because, I mean, you described a difficult mother. I had such a mother. And so the work that I've had to do over the years to allow the dust to fall from her soul so that I can really confront her in a way that brings me a usable relationship, a healing relationship with my mother, a blessing with my mother. It really did take years and years of doing these Yizkor exercises. So let's just go through the year again. Yom Kippur. Now, what's the first thing that we hear on Yom Kippur? Kol Nidre. So I've taken the liberty of saying that a vow, in terms of a mourner, is the if only. The if only that people take and they make it into a truth. When it's just a thought, it's just a, if only I hadn't left the room. If only I had called a different doctor. If only I'd gone to visit. And then they spend their life stuck in that vow. It becomes a vow. And it becomes a commitment that doesn't allow them to truly heal. So on Yom Kippur, we can let go of the vow. For Shemini Atzeret, as I said, at some point, if you make a space for the tears, as Camus said, in the midst of winter comes the yearning for eternal spring. If you allow yourself to truly let the tears fall, at some point you're going to want to get up and dance. You're going to want to get up and celebrate liberation. So for Pesach, there's all of these different images, all of these different ways of looking at the metaphor, how each of the things that we associate with Pesach can become a metaphor for grief that we can explore and ask questions that can help us liberate ourselves. But what is the first thing we do to get ready for Pesach? Right, we get rid of chametz. So one of the most dangerous things in grieving is the way in which we hold on to chametz, the way that we inflate someone when they've died, the way that we turn them into an idol. And we turn them into something so much bigger and perhaps better than they were that we don't really get to have an honest relationship with them. We don't get to ask the questions and elevate the relationship so it can come to a real place of healing. So within the frame of Pesach, we have to look at what is the chametz in a relationship. What is it that we're holding on to that doesn't allow us to see the person in their fullness and in their truth? And so then, again, I'm taking you through a few years so you can work off a few levels of karma, so to speak. So let's go to Shavuot. So Shavuot is, what is the fruit of the relationship? What's the gratitude that you feel? What are the things that you want to do to praise the person? And how can you affirm the harvest? What is the Torah of the person who is gone? What is the Torah of the life that you can no longer live? And how do you carry it forth into turning mourning into dancing? So the word for dancing in the Psalms, the psalm that was actually supposed to have been written for the dedication of the temple, when David said, "You have turned my mourning into into dancing." Dancing in Hebrew has 11 different words. You know, we suffer so from having learned to be Jewish and English. The dance that David was thinking of was the ritual dance that we do, the circle dance of healing, that allows us to, the word mahal also means rhyming. It means a ritual dance done by women. It's also a dance that's done in the world to come as the righteous circle. It's what we need to be able to embody this sense of transformation, of movement into the next season, and this sense that, in fact, mourning, it's not just that it turns into something joyous, like a rikud, like an Israeli dance, but it's a ritual. And when we embody these rituals, when we make them part of our lives, when we have the opportunity to continue the conversation through these frames, we touch all the bases, all the different points on the circle, so that in fact we do get the opportunity to turn our mourning into dancing. And so now I believe we're going to dance. Thank you.
Hi. All right, I'm going to ask now that we do move from our seated positions, and I'll be sensitive also, like one of the women who spoke before me about the sensations and about everybody being comfortable, and I won't make you sweat. We did that outside already today. But let's everybody please step up out of your chairs and move into the middle area. Here we'll make a circle, and I'm going to plug in my boombox. And someone left a phone here.
It's plugged in. It's plugged in. It's not like it.
Oh yeah, well that's plugged in. So we have to make sure we're dancing around it.
We can dance around it, or if it doesn't need to be plugged in, we can pull it out.
Let's do that.
So as we're walking in, I'll just share. First again, my name is Sarah Dance, and thank you all for sticking through to the very last moments. I just parting words at the end, but thank you for being here all the way until now. I want to share that, I guess, in this little taste, we'll have a little taste of the movement and what we're doing outside. But I want to highlight for you the ideas of what we're working with was some moving meditation. This idea that we bring into our bodies, body practice, if we're breathing and our heart is moving with our action, and then I can select music that has musicality that will elevate your actions, and then also I can choose words to play for you that will then also hopefully create a mind, body, spirit experience that we can then elevate whatever is our moment. So thank you for being here with me for this moment. We also talked about, we weren't talking about
I was saying, queuing with a lot of opposites. I find for the high holidays, there are a lot of opposites. There's a lot of contraction and expansion, a lot of internal, a lot of external, a lot of what's going on in our minds, and a lot also about our body, our needs, our comfortable, all of the shul, the physicality of the day, and trying to conceptualize that as like all of that struggle is part of what it is. It's not that we're supposed to be rid of that struggle. We're struggling. We're humans. This is part of the endeavor. So to take it into dance, make it light and fun, takes it out of our heads to Take this moment to feel your incredible beating heart. Feel your feet on the floor. Feel yourself rooted. Just as we can break off at any moment and dance and move our bodies, thank God, to whatever ability we are able. Right now, we can harness the feeling of that even in our stillness. That readiness is always there for us. Let's breathe. Inhale. Take this moment to give yourself a blessing. With Rosh Hashanah starting off into this new season, this new year, a fresh opportunity. Think about your open heart and what you can fill it with, and what you want to use from it to fill the world. Quiet for a moment of 3 breaths. Bless yourself. Both hands. Hands a little bit more. Just hold balance. 1 foot forward, 1 foot underneath. Let's let go. Take a step.